States. I've been in specialist recruitment and with Hayes now for 20 years, 8 of those here based on this side of the Atlantic. Hayes is one of the largest and fastest growing specialist recruiters, and with particular strength in recruiting for the technical fields here in the United States, such as IT, life sciences, oil and gas, and the construction industry. But our webinar today isn't actually industry specific, but it looks to gain insight into how differing attitudes from the younger generation influence how employers should attract, retain, and manage them most effectively. So we're going to keep you on the line for approximately 20 minutes, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end if we've got any questions. And as I say, just type your question into the text field, and then we can answer them when we get to the end of the presentation. So let's start with a little bit about the survey first. If I can move the slide. There we go. The objective of the survey for us was just to be able to provide advice and guidance to our clients when they're recruiting people who are seen as being Generation Y. So how to attract this category to your company. And then once they've been recruited, what do our clients need to do to ensure that they engage with them and actually retain them? And based on the results, we've provided our recommendations, which I'll cover at the end. So we've got a sample size here of 1,000 people, all born between 1983 and 1985. They're across 37 different states across the US, all of whom have American roots as opposed to people who have recently arrived into the country. So just how about the work experience and the work status of the respondents here? So 1 in 3 have got 3 years work experience, so they're actually in the workplace already. A quarter of them are still in full-time education, and then we've got perhaps like a concerning 16% of people are unemployed, but again, overall, it's a good cross-section to be able to pull information from. Why is this topic important, and why do companies need to come to terms with what they're going to do about this change in attitudes? The leaders of businesses today, when you think about it, are typically either baby boomers or Generation X, and I think it's widely accepted that there is a difference in attitudes between generations to some extent. And I just wanted to kind of start with this to share this really simplified way of looking at things to show how things have changed. And I won't talk all the way through this, but there was just a couple of key points on here that I thought that I particularly like, and I thought would strike a chord with most business leaders. So the first one was just looking at the attitude towards work. So where it says work is, like since my generation, and I was born in 1974, the attitude to work really has changed from being seen as being quite a difficult challenge, and I can absolutely relate to that. I think my view of work when I started work was this is difficult, and it actually, as far as I was concerned, it was meant to be difficult. And now we can see younger employees coming into our organisation, and they feel that work should be a fulfilling experience and a satisfying experience almost immediately. And the challenge, of course, as an employer is how do you have a company that's run by one generation and being populated by the other generation. And then the second one I wanted to pull out here was the one about feedback at the bottom of this slide. My personal view at the start of my career 20 years ago was that feedback was really something that was to be avoided at all costs. And as long as I wasn't doing anything underhand or to find my own way, that's absolutely contrasts with what we hear today, with people actively looking for feedback, and not just from their bosses. They're looking for feedback from their colleagues, from their subordinates. It's for real, open, and honest feedback, and in all directions. So anyway, we are well aware of the fact that there has been a shift in attitudes, but how do you actually really understand the nuances here, and what is it that you do about it when it comes to recruitment and to retention? This line here really is the key finding of our research. Generation Y wants to contribute as opposed to work. And by that, I don't mean that they don't actually want to work, but what it does mean is that they've got a different expectation as to what work is actually going to give them. So when you think about contributing, lots of different things spring to mind. This is really about the feeling that their work is worthwhile, that it makes a difference to the company, that it makes a difference to the people who are availing of the service that this company provides, to themselves and to the people that they're helping. It means that they're looking to be involved in the conversation. And when you think about something like Facebook that's happened over the last 5 to 10 years, why is that product so successful? And I believe it's so successful because it's based on communication in all directions and it's an involving thing, and that's what people want, particularly the younger generation. So Generation Y effectively wants work to feel like they feel in their private lives, involved, engaged, part of the dialogue, part of the conversation, and that they're making a difference. So that means there is a shift towards fulfillment, I suppose, at work. But the fundamental question here for an employer is, how does Gen Y actually define fulfillment at work? So just as a little bit of context to this question, if you look in the top right on this slide, we first asked how you know if you're actually being successful in your career. And the highest ranking answer was, well, that's by achieving job satisfaction. So a successful career equals you are happy at work. And in answer to the question, what do you want most from your work, there's a couple of interesting insights. So the highest scoring answer here was interesting work is the thing they would most want from their job, followed by job security. And then you've got personal wealth, and in fourth place, helping others. I thought there was a couple of interesting insights just based on this data. First of all, Gen Y is actually interested in job security, despite what some people might think, but they value it just as much as having interesting work to do. And secondly, it's not like personal wealth is not important to this segment, because it absolutely is, but it is interesting that helping other people is actually seen as important as personal wealth at 40%. So the conclusion here is that Gen Y is similar to previous generations in a lot of ways, in that I want to get well paid and I want to have job security, so nothing has really changed there. But what is different is that there's more of an emphasis now, I think, on satisfaction, and that satisfaction being driven by personal things like, am I enjoying my work and am I actually benefiting other people? So it's more personal, it's more of an individual thing. So with that in mind, let's just have a look at how this need to find interesting or challenging work and the desire to pursue an individual path is actually manifesting itself. So on analysing our results, it appears that Gen Y is pursuing their individualism along two distinct paths. The first one is through entrepreneurship and being self-employed. And when you look at the infographic on the left there, 63% of Gen Y either already have their own business or would at least consider having one. So 11% already have, 36% would consider having their own business, and 15% agree that having their own business is their main career objective. So there's obviously a real need for getting out there and the feeling of doing your own thing. And then secondly, through professional development on an ongoing basis, which would open up new opportunities for themselves. So 9 out of 10, so the vast majority are studying or would be willing to study further throughout their career to progress themselves or advance themselves. So the point here isn't so much, let's let our people go away and be self-employed, which isn't what we want. But the point is that companies need to look at ways to try and harness Generation Y's initiative, that entrepreneurial nature, and their desire to progress. So it's a good point to bear in mind. So now that I've set the scene, I'm just going to cover 4 key areas here over the next few minutes and then wrap up with some brief recommendations at the end. And the 4 areas are, number 1, how Generation Y views management versus leadership. Number 2, the attraction of new hires in this category. Number 3, retaining people, Generation Y, and retaining these guys once you've recruited them. And then finally, a piece about how do you go about recruiting in the social world, so the social media world, where Generation Y are obviously and clearly spending a lot of time and they're virtually living there. And then finally, we've got some recommendations, practical recommendations that you could use in your own business. So let's just start off with management versus leadership. We're going to look at how does Gen Y actually want to be managed and what do they want in a leader. So from the responses that we had from Gen Y and their ideal boss, there's 2 clear roles which would come to the fore. That of a coach or a mentor and a leader, so equal there at 47%. The 2 are not obviously necessarily mutually exclusive, but they do perhaps represent the old and the new when it comes to leadership styles. So where the notion of an inspirational, strong leader who's like elevated through the organization through merit rather than level of seniority, that's always been a part of the fabric of American business. But the desire for a coach or a mentor, that could be reflective of like flatter organizational structures, less hierarchical structures, where more personal relationships between managers and their subordinates are expected. And a good example of that would be at Google, but it's an approach that has been adopted by lots of companies who are looking to be more nimble rather than having a really rigid structure. And I think Generation Y's aversion to having their boss seen as the person who allocates work to them shows really a clear preference for that kind of approach, and why wouldn't they? In the previous slide, we showed that Gen Y wants in equal measures a boss who's a leader as well as a coach or a mentor. And when we asked about what qualities you want to see in your boss, a similar picture emerges. So the fact that the most popular trait in a manager is for them to be knowledgeable and expert at 44%, that reflects a clear thirst for learning amongst Generation Y, which kind of ties in with that 90% of people currently studying or willing to study in the future. That the second most desired quality for a manager is the ability to motivate. That really kind of mirrors the desire to maintain that idea of a traditional inspirational leader. People want to be motivated at work, and that hasn't changed. And thirdly, I thought this was an interesting one. Our respondents wanted integrity and fairness from their leaders. And could that be linked maybe to how Generation Y sees themselves as future leaders and their desire to be part of an organisation that makes a very positive contribution to society? And maybe it's a reaction as well to some of the scandals in corporate America that we've seen in recent years where perhaps there wasn't that level of integrity. So next, we'll have a look at how to attract Generation Y into your organisation. When it comes to deciding to actually work for a potential employer, or if they were deciding about a job offer, most important to them is the benefits offered, which was cited by 56% of the respondents. And I should qualify that, as we'll see in a response to further questions, that mainly actually equates to the value of the base salary. So if it says benefits offers, that's really like the monetary package that they're being given. So it's not surprising that it's that high. So not everything has changed there, I suppose, is the message. The base salary is important to Gen Y. It's just that other factors are very important too. The other dominant aspect is flexibility, which that's really seen as critical for nearly half, 48% of the respondents. Again, in further questioning, that one was mainly to do with flexible working hours. And that could be driven by a couple of things. Like, it could be driven by the change the technology has made to when and where you can get things done. So if I can connect everybody while I'm on the move and communicate openly and easily while I'm on the move, why do I have to come to work to do that? And it could also be, is it more of an objective view of what work is and what it means? If I can complete my work in the time allotted, like, what difference does it make if I do that at night time or during the daytime? And these are questions and thoughts that we hear coming through from younger people in the business. So looking now at how important different elements of a package offered to somebody are, so like how much weighting do they give to these different elements of a job offer? And even though base salary is cited by Gen Y as the most important element in choosing a potential offer, and why wouldn't it be, the degree of importance it's attributed is less than amongst most of the other countries that we've actually surveyed, and it's more of a balanced view in the United States. The fact that the second most attractive benefit is the possibility to work flexible hours, that isn't even a financial benefit in nature, and that shows that to attract a generation of young people, companies really need to be able to develop a more rounded employee value proposition. And a lot of US companies are doing this already, and large ones. There's a great example of PwC. They're just one example of a very large company trying to adopt a startup mentality. So they're taking groups or departments and they're allowing those individuals or teams to decide amongst themselves how the work gets done and when the work gets done, and allowing that flexibility to come in naturally but ensuring the work is completed. And then you've got earning a bonus. That's the third most important benefit. Interestingly, that one was skewed towards respondents on the East Coast, where it's more important for people on the East Coast. Maybe our guess on that is that because that's where the financial industry hubs or centres are, and those industries are more biased towards giving out bonuses. But anyway, it's still an important element. And then, as you'd expect, health insurance isn't really far behind due to it being an expensive thing. So on next point, understanding how Generation Y actually defines career success is a really important part when you're trying to put that value proposition together. And more than anything else, success comes in the form of job satisfaction for Generation Y. And that's the second most common indicator of career success, is achieving a work-life balance. That's really consistent with that desire for flexibility, as we've seen in the responses to some of the other questions. Thirdly, they define career success as making a difference to society, and 28% cited this. And we've talked about this internally, and this could mean ensuring that your corporate social responsibility commitments are maintained as an organisation. But I like to think that this is not just about saying that your company gives X amount to charity every year. It's actually about showing what your company does actually contributes to society every day. The company doesn't exist with the sole purpose of making profit. It actually exists, for example, to create life-changing medication for people, if that was the industry that you're in. And I believe that getting this message out loud and clear about why your organisation makes a difference, and whether that's a bus company and the guy driving a bus, and the point of that job is to get people to work on time every day, or it could be finding an individual or life-changing new job opportunity, as we do at Hayes. It doesn't matter what that is, but the key message here is to be able to make that obvious, loud and clear, and to be able to link what that individual is doing to make that actually happen. How about retention then? After we've actually got the people on board into our organisation, what are the key things when it comes to staff retention? So as much as they desired their work to be interesting, Generation Y wanted to be secure in equal measure, and I think that was one that surprised some people, that job security is important. That might be to do with the difficult economic times that we've gone through. Our research shows that this desire for security actually extends into a potential to be loyal. And in answer to another question, the majority of people who answered the survey expected to have no more than 3 employers over the course of their entire career. And again, I think that was a little bit surprising to us. Personal wealth is still very important, obviously. So remaining competitive on your annual salary reviews is a very important thing to do when it comes to staff retention. But back to the point from the previous slide, Gen Y wants to help others through their work, which came in at only 1% less than attaining personal wealth. And making a difference to society came in strong here too. Again, I don't think this is only to do with your contributions to charity or allowing your staff to volunteer some time to charity, although they're both fantastic ideas for lots of reasons. It's about showing how what your company does makes a difference, and showing how what this particular individual does actually helps make that happen. On to job satisfaction. Gen Y get job satisfaction obviously from feeling valued and appreciated, and who wouldn't, and that's followed by attaining financial rewards. So they want to feel that they're making a valuable contribution, a positive contribution as well. The desire to solve problems is interesting, and that's something that companies can actually tap into to help them come up with new initiatives. You've got companies like Facebook where they hold hackathons where developers and other techies work together it could be anything from a day to a week to try and solve a particularly difficult problem or create a new software. But for your own organisation, this could be as simple as taking small but important problems in your company or department and giving them to some of the younger team members to figure out a solution. And you don't have time to figure out every problem. And every company has a long list of small challenges and annoying problems. And there could actually be a very effective, very productive way of solving some of these by using some of the guys in the team. If we look now at recruiting and how you recruit effectively in the social world, what's different about recruiting people of this generation? And we've talked about how to actually attract them, but how do you connect with them in the first place, which is the challenge now? So recruitment online now is far more than just posting a job on a job board. The advertising mechanisms continually are becoming more advanced, and job seekers don't need to actually search for the job ad because the job ads are virtually proactively coming to them through sophisticated and targeted promotion. And that's what Generation Y have come to expect, which means as an employer looking to recruit, you now have to bring your jobs to them, which in a nutshell could be through any one or probably all of the following 3 avenues. So you've got social media, your mobile and tablet, and then online. And I'm going to talk you through each of these. I'll start with social media. So first of all, we'll just look at social media as a whole and why there's such importance in using social media. This is like blatantly obvious. So some stats that we're all kind of familiar with. If we're not familiar with the actual numbers, we get the message. So 550 million people on Twitter, 150 million people on LinkedIn, 1 billion on Facebook. YouTube is the second largest search engine now, next to Google, which is interesting. But it's really the connection to social media that employers really need to be aware of. So 80% of Generation Y log on to social media daily, and 50%, whether we like it or not, 50% are on social media during work. For this group, this category, they've got virtually a 90% usage, so everybody is doing it. And 70% expect employers to actually review their social profile. And a key insight here, this generation expects that employers would be looking at their social profile. So they actually consider that profile as part of their resumes, and employers should not shy away from doing that. And this generation are on social channels all day long. It's about bringing your job to where your target audience is, as opposed to hoping that they'll actually go out looking for it. This is where Generation Y are. So just building from the previous slide, I mentioned 70% expect employers to review their social profile. Here we can see the impact that this has on some of the more traditional recruitment methods. So over 50% believe a LinkedIn profile is more important than a resume. And most job boards and companies are actually now offering apply with your LinkedIn profile more and more, and we can see that happening. Another interesting point on this, in a report recently by Bullhorn, it noticed that agency recruiters ranked 3 times more effective at leveraging their networks and channels such as Twitter, LinkedIn, than corporate recruiters. Like at Hayes, for example, our consultants are actively engaging every single day with social media to network and communicate with their specialist area. And that's actually helped Hayes become, we're now the #1 most followed recruitment company in the world on social media, on LinkedIn. We're actually the 27th most followed company worldwide. So now recruiting in the digital age now is actually, it's more than just via social media. Mobile is taking the world by storm, and within Hayes, for example, it's a good insight into how quickly this is changing. We've seen a global 300% increase in the number of job applications via mobile channels just in the last 12 months. So for example, Gen Y clicks on 60% more jobs via mobile channels than other generations, and interestingly, they spend nearly 30% more time actually looking at jobs via mobile channels. So if your jobs are not accessible via mobile channels, the question then arises, will that generation actually spend additional time going out and looking for them? A truly effective strategy would integrate the social media with the mobile, and as you can see with over 70% of users accessing social media through their mobile device, it's imperative that your strategy is actually working together, and that's the key. Just an interesting stat here that came from a recent iMomentus report. We show here that only 36% of Fortune 500 company websites are actually mobile friendly. So if you're concerned that you're behind the times by not actually having a mobile strategy in place, then know that you're in good company. And it really does take a lot of work to have an effective, integrated digital recruitment strategy. This last slide, I just wanted to show what's on employers' minds. So like, what are you predicting and what are you feeling are the key challenges right now? And employers are concerned, obviously, about the shortage of candidates, and that's probably something that's going to continue. The skills shortage continues to get worse. But you could see that they're actually now starting to think about things like their profile and their reputation in the marketplace. And I believe as technology has become more and more prevalent, it hasn't particularly made things easier, it's almost made things more difficult. So how do you get your profile out there? How do you convey your reputation in the marketplace with so much noise online? And what this really tells us that employers, they're aware of the need for an online strategy, and an effective online strategy helps build your employer brand. And obviously then the key is positioning yourself as an employer of choice. And when you take that together with the social and the mobile strategies, that's really the final piece of the puzzle to have an effective digital recruitment strategy. So that is pretty much everything. I'm just going to leave you some recommendations on what you can do with some of this information, or what you could potentially do with some of this information in your own organization. So first of all, individualism, which you mentioned at the very beginning, that really requires a strong internal communication plan in your organization, and that does not mean simply telling people what's happening. It's got to be a communication up as well as down, and laterally. Is your sector of Generation Y employees informed of the work that they're doing and how it's making a difference and fitting into the picture? And even more importantly, Are you actually listening to what they're saying and getting their opinions coming back up the line? There is real potential for Generation Y individuals to be very loyal, and they want to be, but you've got to have that environment right. Is it motivational? Is it supportive? Is it a rewarding environment? Think about, training your current managerial team, particularly if they're not of the same generation, on how can you inspire your team? How can you motivate your team? How can you be strategic? How can you be seen as that coach that they're looking for, as opposed to simply an allocator of work to them? When it comes to attracting and drawing new people into the company, showcasing job satisfaction is absolutely essential. So being able to promote that in some way, you see a lot of companies using videos to do that, including ourselves. That, I think, is an essential thing, as job satisfaction is such a hot topic for people. And then obviously promoting job security is important, the benefits, the corporate culture and work-life balance also. So there's a lot of work to do there to really get that message out and make it clear. And the final part, and when you are recruiting, you've really got to work out, how do I get my job in front of the right person? Don't expect the right person to come to your job, and that's about building an effective digital recruitment strategy, which I said is easier said than done. So that's really everything. Before we look to see if we have any questions, just thank you very, very much for your time. I think we stuck to the time allowance almost exactly, a couple of minutes over. And as you mentioned, you can request your own copy of the full report from our website. Just go to hayes-us.com, and we will send a copy to you. And if we can help you with anything else, and obviously with any recruitment challenges that you have, please get in touch. You can drop an email to marketing@hayes.com, or you can email me directly. It's Rowan, ROWAN.O'Grady, with no apostrophe, @hayes.com. So with that, let's just take a minute or two and see if we have actually got any questions. So I'll just give it a second. Let's give it a second or two to see if I have, and try and read these. Okay. Right. So we've got one. See if we can get more as we go. So the question is, are job ads necessary now, when you can connect directly to Gen Y via their social channels, i.e. sending out emails on LinkedIn? Okay, so are job ads necessary when you can connect directly to Gen Y via their social media channels? I think, yeah, I can't say that job ads are unnecessary. I think it really just comes down to time. If you've got a really defined person in mind, then using social media to find that person could be a very good tactic, but that can take quite a bit of time and resources to effectively search that person and then develop the relationship. Like a well-developed job ad that's strategically promoted, particularly to the right people, helps bring people into you. But I think really, again, it's all about where your jobs are promoted and who you're actually targeting those jobs at, and are you using different channels? So hopefully that answers that. Let's see, do we have another one? Because we have one more question. The question is, what social media channels would you say are the most important to recruiting Generation Y? Honestly, I would say that the king of the social media channels is probably LinkedIn. I think it's integral, and it's basically the most professional. We're really strategically building networks of the right candidate. It's a complicated thing to do, and it can be timely or it can be costly depending on the kind of license that you need. Twitter is actually something that's coming through as a good job searching media, but again, the challenge with Twitter is it's complicated and it seems to take a large amount of time, and it's real time as well, so you need quite a lot of resource to put into it. I think the key for social media recruiting, it needs a lot of different channels, and they need to be integrated, and they've got to be working together. So I don't think the answer is just use one. I think, and like we do, we're using multiple different channels for different reasons, but it's an integrated strategy, and I think that's really the key to being successful in that area. And I think, let's see, is there any more? No. So our presentation was very comprehensive. So that's it. Thank you very, very much for your time. And as I said, please contact us if we can help you with anything at all.